And actually, thanks to my own F-wittery, this is take 3, speaking to Joe Bradshaw, who I'm very, very excited to speak to today. Joe, I've been really, really excited to speak to you. You are a crusader, a warrioress, and also what's incredible about you is you're also an Everest avalanche survivor. So you've got the most juicy story. And also I have the great privilege of having worked with you several times with the lovely Dave Stewart from the Fresh Air Leadership Company. So my experience of you as a mountain leader is another suite of your many packages of awesomeness. So very excited to see you. Hello, Joe. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. This is the first time in about 7 months I've put a shirt on rather than my Tesco delivery kit or some outdoor stuff. So yes, I feel quite dressed up in my kitchen.
And by the way, just those magic words of the Tesco delivery stuff, the way you've lent in to the current crisis and the adaptation of that Darwin quote, it's not the survival of the fittest, it's the most adaptive and the most responsive. And we talked on the mountains before about it's not how you're knocked over, it's how you get up again and how we lean into crisis. We must talk about how, you've lent in and how you've evolved during this time as well. So do you want to just tell us the Tesco story, actually?
Well, in the beginning of March, I had a full year of expeditions planned. So many that I was a bit concerned that I'd overcooked it and that I was going here, there and everywhere. And but when you're a freelancer and when you get lots of juicy gigs, you don't want to say no. It's very hard to say no, and trying to get everything to fit in was getting to be really difficult. And then obviously the thought that we were going to go into lockdown happened. And I thought, oh, this is not going to be good, because I knew all of my work would be cancelled. I work in the outdoors, I work with groups, I go abroad. I was due to go to Nepal 3 weeks after lockdown, which obviously was cancelled as well. So as an outdoor instructor and expedition leader, I was not going to be in a good place. So the week before lockdown, I think my Duke of Edinburgh work was being cancelled quite quickly by the guy that I work for, obviously because we weren't going to be allowed to get into groups or even go out. So I thought I need to do something about this. I can't financially afford not to work, and mentally I knew I would be a bit scuppered without having that reason to get up in the morning. So I applied to my local Tesco in Salisbury for a couple of roles, one in on the checkouts and another as a driver, knowing that the driver was where I needed to be. But at the time it was like, I'd be happy to just go out to work. And they got back to me really quickly, and I started the day of lockdown on the Monday. My mum had picked up my 2 dogs on Mothering Sunday, and we'd said goodbye in a car park in Southampton, not knowing when I was going to see her or my dogs again. And I started at Tesco on a Monday morning, 6 a.m. Monday morning, did a week of 8-hour shifts of just swiping left on the checkout. And then the following Monday I went into the .com department and started delivering. And I stayed there until the middle of August. And then I was given 3.5 months unpaid leave so I could get back to my my UK outdoor role, which I have been doing. And I go back at the beginning of December for another month, 2 months, 3 months, don't know. But it's absolutely saved my bacon, absolutely.
There's a lovely adage, and by the way, you have some beautiful optimistic mantras. There's even one behind you going, "You've got this." And interestingly, a chap I was speaking to yesterday, his mum gave him a wooden teddy bear that said exactly that. So, it's a really good, universal, gorgeous mantra. But there's an adage, which is, and I've got lots of these from you, but one of them is, "What's meant for you won't pass you by." And talking of you swiping left, I think you did an amazing job of leaning in by thinking, what can I do? And as you're an adventurer and a mountaineer, there's that delicious irony of my work's gone off a cliff. And if I may, in terms of resilience, this isn't your first avalanche.
No,
no,
absolutely.
See what I did there? So
yeah.
you are a real example of unbounded optimism about how one might, adapt and be flexible. And the fact you were there 6 a.m. day one of lockdown, but also your generosity. You are someone I experience who loves to help others. You have an incredible altruistic nature to you. And we'll talk about your charity work as well that you do. But I could feel the pain in some of the posts that we were all doing, but you particularly, because you so love the outdoors. And and as an expedition leader, a week away from the next peak, wow. But I was full of admiration for you and couldn't wait to speak to you as soon as I had this.
No, thank you. And it was really interesting because I reframed it. I'm very into reframing things. So I reframed the Tesco job as being I was perhaps on a bike ride that I used to lead or work on, and I was delivering luggage to all of the hotels. And it was just, I was not delivering luggage on a bike ride for clients, I was delivering people's groceries to their houses. And I have met the most amazing people on my travels and seen parts of Wiltshire I never knew existed. And I got cooked in the sun and frozen in the rain, and will do over the winter in the rain as well. But there's a good friend of mine said to me once, there's no such thing as a selfless act. And I needed this so much that it was funny. I was talking to a very close friend, and when I got into retail back in the early 90s, when I gave up horses and thought that was going to be my life, but had to give it up. And she sort of took me under her wing, and we've stayed friends, really good friends ever since. And I said to her, well, maybe I shouldn't be going for a job because maybe somebody else will need it. And she was like, Jo, if you have the nous to go and get something, go and do it, because they will take other people on as well. It's not like you're taking the last job available ever. So, go and do it. And I'm so glad I did.
And by the way, there is another really lovely thing. I heard a quote during the pandemic of don't ask permission to survive. Your sense of deciding, what your options are, what my choices are. And then it's just this lovely idea of stepping in, crossing the line, and, beautifully done. And again, a great generosity in the fact that you've become sort of community outreach personified, and then there's a delicious reciprocity in that.
I knew I had to do something. I'm not, when I can be a very busy person and I like to do stuff, but also when I'm at home, I can be a very lazy person as well. I call it, it's active resting, obviously, which we love doing.
We love to active rest. I love that.
We love to active rest, and I'm very good at sitting my what was an ever-growing backside on the sofa and but it's when I'm home from expeditions, I need that rest, but I know when I'm overdoing it. And I think during lockdown, I was either, because it was such a sudden change from what would have been such an incredible year of teaching and assessing D&V and going and climbing big mountains and giving talks, in person and all this exciting stuff to.
And am I right in assuming you were one mountain peak away from your 7 peaks? Was it that close?
Oh yeah, that close as well. So that's been put back 3 times now over the last 2 and a bit years. So it's like things are so close, and then they're like so many people, they're taken away from you. And it's funny, I did a mental health first aid course in July online, and it was absolutely fantastic. With a lady called Jo Lindholm, and we did it. It was all on not Zoom, but it was all like this, and it was brilliant. And she mentioned during the course about saying at least to people, and I've had that a few times actually since doing the Tesco job. Where I'd be saying, oh my God, I'm working shifts, and I haven't worked shifts. Oh, I don't think I've ever worked shifts, and I was so tired and everything was changing. And then someone said, well, at least you have a job.
Oh, yes. And
it's like a big kind of slap in the face, as if, well, actually, your emotions don't count because someone else has it worse. And I'm like, I know someone else has it worse than me. And I'm not one for racking up, well, I was living on my own and I wasn't seeing my dogs and blah, blah, woe is me. It was like, this is how I'm feeling. I am feeling really bad at the moment. And then somebody would come and go, it doesn't matter. There's someone else feeling worse. I'm like, and it was a real reminder for me, never to at least someone else again.
Just beautiful. Say that again, to never at least someone else again.
At least someone else again.
And by the way, as you are a speaker as well, you know that there is the most extraordinary alchemy and gold in what you're describing, because this is a trailblazing, adaptive survivor story, and it's not your first avalanche, which I know we're going to talk about.
No. But I think I think it's things in life. I also say in my talks, it's not who you are, what you do, how old you are, how much money you earn. It's not the good or the bad stuff that happens in your life that makes you the person you are, but it's how you deal with it that counts. And we've said that on our jobs with Dave Stewart as well. And it's interesting when you say that to an audience, and sometimes they're like, oh yeah, it's like you can be. I was listening to a podcast by a polar explorer called Steve Jones, amazing podcast on the World Extreme Medicine webcast. And he said, beware of your emotional wake. And again, so, you can have a really good emotional wake. So you take people on a really good ride with you, or you can have this massive power of negativity that can be quite damaging to other people as well. And it's been very insightful when I've been watching, because I like people watching, which sounds really creepy, but it's not. I'm really so interested in psychology and how people act and react.
Yes.
And I see it a lot with students, because obviously their emotions are quite heightened, and about how like recently, especially with the Duke of Edinburgh's work I've been doing over the last couple of months, everything, because we're having to be so much more careful about, they're in single tents, which has a reaction for them because they've never camped before. So it's actually quite a scary thing. So it's having, again, to reframe stuff, and about how some students are dealing with it and some aren't. And
by the way, the really profound thing you've also mentioned in the world of coaching, obviously, is this notion of reframing. And again, you've done a beautiful job in classically reframing with the, the mantras that you've already established with that.
Yeah, I think I used to be a very negative. I used to be a very negative person. And why am I not getting what she's or he's getting? Why have I, why is this? Why me? Why I used to be like that for a variety of different reasons. And when I think since I've been in adventure and I've been traveling so much more to countries where people live with virtually nothing and they just get on with it and they don't do the woe is me thing, and I see some people in countries going, well, there's no Wi-Fi. So
yes, first world problems right there.
Yeah, exactly. It is the first world problem, 100%. And it's just made me much more aware of my emotional wake from years gone by, and my legacy from years gone by, but how I don't want to live my life anymore. And if something happens, I'm not an always look on the bright side of life. However, I just don't want to be dragged down by the negativity that I could create, or someone else is just being negative. And it's like sometimes you just have to take a step back and go, I have a roof over my head, I have people that love me, I'm not going to starve, I have my dogs.
Gratitude perspective there, and reframing.
Just a bit of a baseline. And I get, black cloud days and
you're deliciously human, Jo. That's what's so lovely about this.
I know. But it was, so I put a post up a couple of days ago about being single. The jet suit paramedic.
Yes, I saw that post.
The guy who invented that lives in Salisbury, so I'm in Salisbury now, and he lives just down the road. I know.
He could just fly over for a cup of tea.
I know.
Actually, he flew over.
Yes.
Get him next time.
Two friends of mine said, "You do realise he lives in Salisbury?" I was like, "No way." So
what's his name? So let's do a big shout out for Joe's future.
I know. Richard Browning. Yeah.
Richard Browning.
Gravity Industries. There you go. Local startup.
Big shout out for local. Yeah, love that. The local business handle there.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, with him, it's not likely that you're looking for him and then 3 go over all at once. He's one of a kind, but you're going to have to sort of, how are you going to get him down? You're going to lasso him or harpoon him?
Yeah, I don't know. So I can't remember why I was bringing up that conversation. Oh, about being honest. So I put up a post on Facebook and Instagram tagging in the video of this jet suit paramedic. I just think it's the most amazing thing, and can, in mountain rescue situations or any medical situation, can be a huge benefit. We've
come a long way since the St. Bernard dog with a bit of brandy around our necks in Laurel and Hardy land.
Brandy, that will just cure everything. And I said about being single, and I did this post about, that lockdown has actually heightened the fact that I had a choice to be single before lockdown. And now the best choice is to stay single. It's not a time to date people now, So I've got rid of the apps and I'm just like, right. And I'm very happy being single. I've been single for a long time.
By the way, autonomy is a great thing too, because it's another great survival thing. You talked about young people being intense on their own. Yeah. Increasingly in the bombardment of the world, we're less good at actually being at peace with ourselves.
Yeah, very much so. And I spent a very wet day in Wales last week, totally on my own in my van in a campsite. I was the only on a farm. I was the only person there, stupid enough to stay. And I spent 24 hours on my own, and actually it's a very grounding thing to do. It's a very, it's like, I'm fine, because at home I'm fine on my own. I've got my dogs and I spend a lot of time, being a solo, and I'm more than capable of doing that. But I think when the choice is, it's not taking away from you, because you can still go and date, but it's just not the right thing to do at the moment.
Yeah.
So I put this post up about, so it's still on Facebook if anyone wants to see it, but it's still, and then I said, this jet suit is how I imagine my next boyfriend.
Well, do you know what? I think if someone landed in a jet suit, I think I'd probably want to marry them as well, particularly if they're saving you at the same time.
Yeah. And then I had some lovely comments, and someone said, "That's very brave of you to be so honest on social media." And I was like,
that's the point.
I think exactly. I said I rarely shy away from I'm always honest on social media, because I don't like the kind of let's always have, sunny and smiley and whatever photos. People, I am like everybody else in the world. I am human. I have my ups and downs. But what I post about is that there will be other people feeling exactly the same thing, but just not probably there enough to talk about it, and I hate the word brave, because brave is when you go into a burning building and go and save people, or the doctors and nurses and the NHS and the care workers and everyone. That's brave. Brave is not posting about something. It's just like, if I can get out there that how I'm feeling, and someone else goes, oh my God, that's exactly how I am, I'm glad I'm not alone. Brilliant. That's what it's about.
Beautifully done. And keep hold of that adage, what's meant for you won't pass you by, like Tesco's a few paragraphs ago. And so whatever window of opportunity, and we have a wonderful window of opportunity that we met each other through a lovely conduit of Dave Stewart, who for me has been a real window of opportunity in my life, as alongside you, lead Sherpa with Affliction. So that was the most beautiful introduction and probably the longest, but I love you for that. That's great. No, that's good. So now let's bring you into the clearing. So we're going to explore some storytelling archetypes of, the reason behind this podcast is to get you to enjoy unpacking your thinking as we take you into a clearing, and then there's a tree, and then some other archetypes as we go along. So first question, Joe Bradshaw, what does a clearing look like, feel like? What is a clearing for you?
A clearing for me, so it would definitely be outdoors. It would
You
be.
surprise me.
I know. Shocker. Biggest shock of the year. It would be going for a walk with the dogs, whether it's 10 minutes down the road going up to a fabulous oak tree on the Laverstock Downs, or whether it's dragging Dave the tyre.
I was going to ask you about Dave. How's Dave? Tell us more.
Dave is good.
Dave is a tyre.
So Dave is a tyre that I drag for training.
He's not an ordinary tyre either. Describe Dave the tyre.
No, he's quite large. So he's 23 kilos of tyre. And he's got a cover, so a fantastic company, Farnborough Aircraft Company, they designed and made a tyre cover for him with Place to Be, which is a charity I fundraise for, children's mental health. And so I have, over the last 3.5 years, I've been dragging Dave around quite a lot, either in the New Forest, which is just down the road from where I live, over near Goodwood, where my mum lives, or I take him on trips to North Wales and go and find some very steep hills. By
the way, that's why you haven't got a boyfriend. I'm joking here, because whenever anyone meets you, they go, "Oh, look, it's Joe and Dave." Hello, Joe. Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Hey, Dave. And Dave actually has a baby brother now, baby Dave.
Oh, baby Dave.
So when I went to Antarctica at the end of last year to do number 6 of the 7 summits, and I knew we were pulling much smaller hulk. So I do the training because on Denali in Alaska and Antarctica, we pull sleds, which can be quite heavy. On Denali, they were incredibly heavy, and on Vincent, they were less so. So I got a smaller tyre to do sort of a slightly less intense training. So I choose which one I take out.
So it's either Dave or little Dave. So when you're contemplating a mountainscape, you're thinking, is this a Dave or is this a little Dave?
Yeah, exactly. A sort of big Dave or little baby Dave.
You're reframing again, if I may. You're reframing it based on.
So for me, I get into this very chilled state when I'm doing the tyre drag, because I can go out for anywhere between 2 and sort of 7 or 8 miles dragging this thing, and it can take an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, up to 5 or 6 hours, depending on what stage of my training I'm in. And I just get into this flow, and I stick on an audio book or a podcast, and the dogs are running around and they're having a whale of a time because they know I'm slow, but we're going to be out for a while. And it's just, and people stop and talk to you as well. And I generally find times where there aren't going to be many people around, because it can be a bit noisy for other people, and also especially for horses. And
by the way, you sound to me like a complete and utter awesome squad. Dave, you and the 2 dogs.
Me and my 2 dogs, yes.
And Dave and Dave. I love that.
Dave, they're my training partner. Nobody's going to attack you in the nobody attacks you in the New Forest, but nobody's going to come at you when you're dragging a tyre. That's for sure.
Listen, I did describe you as a warrior-ess at the beginning. I think there's a sort of Bodiccean sort of quality to you, and honestly, it's phenomenal. So we're in your clearing, if I may.
Yeah, so my clearing, yeah.
So your clearing is, I'm hearing a big oak tree, which is a great segue into shaking. Good luck shaking this. We're going to shake the tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. Yes. And we both got this exercise, and big ups to this lovely gentleman, Dave Stewart. I got this beautiful storytelling exercise from him called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's open to interpretation, Joe, but you've had 5 minutes to think about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention, and then 1 quirky or unusual fact about you. Don't panic, Mrs. Manring. You don't have to download the whole thing in a wanna. So we'll keep conversing as we go through. Yeah. So it's yours to interpret. Shake the tree. How'd you like them apples? Which of these would you like to talk about first?
Well, I think because I can be quite an ordered person, so let's just go in order.
The floor is yours.
So, and I was when you sent me the reminder of what it was, I actually spent 5 minutes thinking about it last night. So I've written it down on my phone. she's just here. So 4 things that have shaped me. So obviously my parents, and I love this. I love the nature nurture debate and how even, you know, twins can be so completely different despite the fact that they're so intrinsically linked. Or like me and my brother and myself are very different despite the fact that we've got exactly the same genes from my mum and dad.
Are you twins? I'm just fishing for
No,
that.
we're not twins. No, there's 15 months between myself and my brother, and he's in the RAF. He's a former Harrier jump jet pilot.
Bennett, what a intrepid family you have there.
Oh, but when he was doing that, I wasn't mountaineering. My mum was very grateful that he had finished flying and was on to sort of.
And by the way, the Hawker Siddeley jump jet, that was the one that took off vertically, wasn't it? The
Harrier, yeah, yes, it did.
So there's a connection. I have to tell you, there's a connection between your brother and then the guy who's going to fly over your house because he's on a sort of. Exactly. Sorry, that's by the by.
No, that's fine. So and I always find it fascinating, you know, how even though we're from the same families, that we can be so vastly different. And I had a very loving upbringing, but from a family whose emotions were sometimes quite held within. I always knew I was loved, but we were very, you know, stiff upper lip, let's just crack on type family. My dad was 45 when I was born, and he passed away nearly 3 years ago when he was 91 and a half. So he came from a completely different era to, you know, what it's like to live these days. And my mum is 14 years younger than him. And they were such a unit, such an incredibly strong unit. And they just went and did stuff. You know, they built boats, they built houses, you know, our holidays were going over to Holland where we had a Dutch barge that they were building into a floating home. So, you know, it was a little bit of a different existence, I guess, from the normal, let's go to Ibiza or Mallorca or wherever. So my brother and I just went off and sorry, I just seen out the corner of my eye, my dog has just got some bubble wrap and she's just about to destroy it.
You need to go get it. I'll fill in. So, anyone know any jokes or anything? Or so we're talking to Jo Bradshaw, intrepid expedition leader, mountaineer, and all-round altruistic bunny rabbit who's rescued some bubble wrap from the jowls of her pooch.
From my spaniel, because she would have literally ripped it to pieces and then probably eaten it. And then
let's have a big shout out for your spaniel. What's her name? Pardon?
Right. So
what's the name of your spaniel? Sorry.
So the small one that was the bubble wrap destroyer, she's Lily.
Lily. My daughter's called Lily, but she's not the same.
Is she?
Yes.
And she's now drinking water, which she might. And my older one is Daisy, and she's 14 and still cracking on like a 2-year-old. She's brilliant. So yeah, those are my intrepid dogs. So my parents gave me very much of an upbringing, and so we just go and get on and do stuff. You know, there was so whilst they were building the boat, my brother and I were out on our bikes somewhere in Holland.
As you do.
Like you do. And we were in the generation where you just you went out in the morning and then you came home in the evening and you were packed off with your honey sandwiches.
Winnie the Pooh, you're feral Winnie the Pooh.
And you just went and did, you know, you went off and did stuff. So, you know, that's how we were sort of brought up, and that's, you know, I just get on and do stuff where it's like, fortunately I've picked up some practical skills from my parents as well.
By the way, there's something lovely about just throwing you out the door each day and then you just get on with the day. And maxim of mine is OWTD, which is on with the day. And just get out and have an adventure.
Yeah, so I build stuff in my van and I do stuff in the house. And because my dad once said to me, when are you going to get a boyfriend? And I said, I don't need a boyfriend, Dad. I'm quite happy. You know, I'm quite capable of doing stuff. He's like, that's not why you don't have a boyfriend, so he can do DIY. Lily.
Lily, stop chewing the
Love
modem.
it.
Yes, down boy, girl.
Yeah. So, yes, you know, I just am quite happy to get on with things.
By the way, if Lily, my daughter, wasn't at university at the moment, she'd probably be distracting in the background too, and I'd be telling her to stop biting the modem. Lily, stop biting the modem.
So yeah, my parents were very, very much shaped me, and have been unendingly supportive about, especially in there was 15 or so years, or nearly 20 years of my life where when I left horses, I went into retail I was about 24 at the time. By
the way, there's a story behind the story there. You've said twice,
yeah.
when I left horses. So just tell us a bit more about that.
So when I left school, my plan for my life was to go to agriculture college, get a diploma in horse management, go and run a yard or what have you, so spend my life working with horses in the equine industry. And I did that. Well, I nearly did the agricultural college, but I had to go, before I went to college, you had to do a year out in a yard somewhere. And I went down to the New Forest, actually, to a place called Catherston Stud, which was owned by an Olympic dressage rider called Jenny Lauriston Clark, who was fierce, but in a really good way. There was no messing with her whatsoever. And I spent a year there, and I didn't want to leave. I thought, I don't want to go to agricultural college, because I didn't really love academia that much, even though it was quite practical. So my dog's eating something else now.
And by the way, I've got to shut the comedy of Zoom. I've got to shut my window because a dust truck is coming past going beep, beep, beep. So I'm just going to do that too.
Right.
So
we'll both disappear.
Yeah,
sorry, people who are watching.
Twiddle your thumbs. We'll be back.
Oh, Lily.
The comedy of Zoom. We love that. So as we can see, those of you that are watching this podcast on the Zoom video, Jo Bradshaw is an intrepid explorer. And in the background, you've got this gorgeous map of the world she loves to explore. Marvellous.
Oh, dear. Oh, dearie me.
Dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. No, apologies not necessary. So have you shot the dog? I hope not.
I might actually just go and put them in the van, because they're quite happy in there. No, they're fine. They're fine. Lovely.
I'm trying to do this in a one, so if you do have to put them in a van, we'll have to come back. Yeah. But anyway,
no, that's fine. We'll carry on. They'll be fine. They need to learn to be quiet.
So what happened for you to leave horses?
So I got to the stage where I had run a few yards and had moved on, and had never really found an employer who I really clicked with. Working horses is hard physically, and it's very low paid. It's a very much a vocation, and I just didn't like the fact of being treated like a second-class citizen because of the job I did by my employers,
which, by the way, links beautifully to a quote that I got from you, which is your vibe attracts your tribe.
Yeah, definitely.
So it wasn't for you.
I think the dream and the reality were getting too far apart.
Yeah.
And I got to the stage where I either needed to move on again and find another yard, or get my own yard, which I couldn't afford, or actually get out.
Yeah.
And I was going out with a farrier at the time, and I'd moved in with him, and then I gave up horses and needed to find a job. So I was
sorry to be thick. What's a farrier? That I am being thick.
Blacksmith.
Of course.
Yes. Does the horse's hooves,
By the way, there is a joke. I have to share. There is a joke about a blacksmith, which I went for a job as a blacksmith, or a farrier, as I now know. And they asked me, "Have you ever shoed a horse?" And I said, "No, but I once told a donkey to fuck off." Hey, that's just a complete irrelevant segue.
Yeah, no, and not unexpected, Chris.
Thank you very much.
So I was living in near Aylesbury at the time in Buckinghamshire, and I needed to get a job. So there was a department store in town that was just about to open up. So I thought, well, I'll apply there and see what happens. Anyway, they took me on amazingly. And that's how I met my then to be, oldest and greatest friend, Ruth, who was my manager. And I can't remember why we got into this. So
I was getting you to just explain, because you'd said twice, I was about to leave horses. And I was about to
leave horses. So, and then my relationship broke down with my boyfriend. He cheated on me.
Oh,
but actually, and this is where the reframing comes in, he probably did me a massive favor.
Of course he did.
Because it sent me on a different life path.
And by the way, why I said of course he did is because he didn't deserve you. That's it's reframing.
Yeah, so and this actually comes on to the second of the four, which is stuff that shapes you, and it's the bad stuff.
Yes.
Chisel happens in your life, and like I said earlier, it's not whether it's good or bad that it's the person you are, but how you deal with it. And at the time, I found it very difficult to deal with all of this. I left the job that I thought I was going to be doing for the rest. I thought it was going to be my life. I thought I'd marry a farmer or a farrier and
have a blacksmith
and have kids and live on a farm and have lots of dogs and horses and what have you. And I ended up working inside a windowless department store and thinking, how does my life come, not how does it come to this, but this was not my plan. But I applied myself to everything I did after that, and I moved up through the management structure in retail and then went into other industries. And some people would say, well, you never really stuck at anything. And I was in jobs between 2 and 5 years, and I was just working my way up. And management is management. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It's,
a transferable skill.
Transferable skills, yeah, exactly. So, I learned a lot from that, but I didn't know where my place in life was. I'd lost my faith in the world, because it's not supposed to be like this,
And by the way, I read recently that what's lovely about how we overcome those moments and pockets in our lives is, even in the darkness, look down for the golden thread, and there'll be something there that's shining that you can pull on to pull you towards your future.
Yeah, and but I didn't know what my future lay. I had no, when I left school, I had a definite trajectory of life. And my brother, going back to my brother, he, for long before he left school, he knew he was going into the RAF. He knew he was going to fly Harriers. He's still in the RAF. He's an Air Commodore and in charge of the RAF budget, I think, now. I mean, I have no idea what my brother does now, but he does some really good stuff. And, and I really envied that focus, and I just didn't have it. I was like, well, whenever I went to see my mum and dad for Sunday lunch, I'll go, oh, well, I'm going to go off and do this. And I'll go off, and they must have thought, oh my God, here she goes.
By the way, I know what you're saying. Your brother seemed to have a sort of linear path. But
absolutely.
But the golden thread in what I'm hearing is linear about you is your sense of adventure. That's a linear fact. You're always on a path.
Well, that's the thing. And I didn't know, I didn't know that then. All I thought was that I just couldn't stick at anything. But I then realized that actually I was learning good skills in whatever industry I was in, and whatever situation came about. It was all layers of resilience that were being put in place.
Absolutely.
And actually it was, ultimately, if you think of it sort of really holistically, it was getting me ready for this life of adventure, because
and by the way, if I may, sorry to interrupt you, there's a brilliant Gabriel Lorquez quote about when he died. He said he died of pancreatic cancer, but he left a last tome of information to the world. And apparently it was like a bit of a paragraph, a wanna. He said, I'm going to tell you two things. I'm going to tell you what I've noticed and what I've learnt. And he said, what I've noticed is that everybody wants to live atop the mountain. But what I've learnt is that life is not the living atop the mountain. It's the journey towards the summit.
100%.
And that's 100% what you're about. Your journey towards is what's so enticingly brilliant.
Yeah, and it's because when I'd been in retail and I was in electronics, so semiconductors, which I knew nothing about, but it wasn't the industry, it was the company and the role, and it was
And by the way, even that expression, a semiconductor, Joe Bradshaw, you are a semiconductor to connect things.
I'm a little microchip. So I can, the electronics industry had a massive crash, and I was moved sideways in the company. Fortunately, I wasn't made redundant, but I was moved sideways. I was actually back at doing the job where I first started 5 years before, fortunately on the same salary I was on, but I didn't want to be doing that job again because I'd moved on from that. So I just saw an advert in the local paper, the Bucks Herald, who I actually used to work for as well, for a business advisor at what was then Business Link. And this was back in 2003. Yeah, 2003. And again, went for the job, thought, it's all good interview experience. Anyway, they took me on amazingly. And I spent the next 5 years at Business Link, either as a business advisor. So we went around to businesses and advised them on, had a chat about their businesses and what their needs and wants were, which obviously two different things, and hooked them up with other government led initiatives, or tried to find them funding, or got them into networking groups, or just basically tried to help them move forward. And it was really rewarding, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do long term, but I didn't know what that long term was. And then just before I left electronics, went into Business Link, I was very bored at work one day and I saw a parachute jump advertised for charity and thought, yes, I'll do that. I'm really scared of heights, so the best thing to do is to throw myself out of a plane.
As you do.
Like you do. And a friend of mine who was, and this actually goes on to the third thing. I talk a lot about champions in your life, people that you don't, or guardian angels, whatever you'd like to call them, who just sort of come along gently and go, this is where you need to be going. This is what you need to be doing, despite the fact that you keep saying no, no, no. And I was very good at saying no back then. And who
is this recurring angel? Who kept nudging you?
So Caroline.
Yeah,
so amazing. She still lives up near Aylesbury.
Caroline who?
Gearing.
Caroline Gearing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She's amazing, amazing lady. And she actually took me up to the jump site. Thankfully, I mean, just in case you can't drive back. Sorry, Caroline, really?
Awkward.
But yeah, and I was, I had verbal diarrhea on the way up. I was like so nervous, and I said nothing on the way back. And she said to me, "What's next? There must be something next." And I'm like, "Oh no, that's it. I'm done with my adventure." And
by the way, what a powerful question at that time in your life. What?
Yeah.
Reframing right there.
Because I was in my
because what's got you here is not going to get you there, and that moment of,
because we talk about at Business Link there was this when it did a lot of networking events, there was this particular gentleman at the time who was doing a lot of talks about getting there. He said there is no there is the end. And who wants to get to the end? Nobody wants to get to the end. It's what you do with the getting bit is the most important. Forget about the there, because we say, don't we? It's like someone says, "Oh, how are you doing?" It's like, "Oh, getting there."
Getting where?
Getting where? Getting, what is there to you? Is it getting a new car, or is it putting yourself into more debt, or is it, I don't know.
Yeah.
My getting there at the moment, I guess, is just tidying my house.
Yeah.
Just little things. So.
Oh, you've frozen slightly. Have you gone? Oh, you're back. And you're back. The quirks of Zoom. You went momentarily, but you're back.
That was weird. Yes.
But we're getting there. See what I'm doing there.
So, and then when I got back from this parachute jump, I jumped and raised money for Asthma UK. And then you get into their marketing wheel. and they sent me a flyer about a bike ride in Peru.
By the way, that's another journey of your awesomeness, is that you too, there's an asthma story for you. You don't have to go into detail about it, but I was thinking, that charity, is that because you had asthma yourself and you had a connection?
No, it wasn't. No, friends of mine had, and he coughs.
Oh, that was well timed. Thank you.
No, friends of mine had. I think it was just, it was the parachute jump, the fact that friends of mine have asthma. It just seemed to, I don't think there was any altruistic, it's like I must conquer the world for asthma or anything. I just wanted to do a little bit of something.
Yes,
and
some of the charities you now trailblaze for are closer to your heart, and I know we're going to talk about that too.
Yes, yeah, very much so. So it was a sort of, I raised £400 just by sending an email around the office, and we had it was a global company, it was a big organization, and people obviously thought, well, she's never going to do that, so yeah, I'll give her £1, and I did. And then so this flyer came through, and this is how things are so neatly connected, even though you don't know it at the time. So a flyer came through from Asthma UK for a bike ride in Peru, run by a company called Discover Adventure, who are based in Salisbury, which I happen to be living in Salisbury now.
What are the chances?
And I'm living in Salisbury because of Discover Adventure. So I took the flyer into work, and Caroline said, "Oh, brilliant, that's the next thing." And I was like, absolutely not. Why would I want to go and do that? And we got through all the reasons I couldn't do it. Like, I didn't have a bike and I couldn't afford. The main reason, apart from fear and putting myself out into the world, is that I didn't have the deposit to sign up. And so Caroline, bless her, and this was probably one of the most pivotal moments, actually. She said, "I will pay the deposit for you now. You pay me back in installments. Go and do it, and we'll work it out." So it was a very much, and this was definitely my dad's way of life, is say yes now and we'll work it out later. Brilliant. And if Caroline hadn't have said that, or hadn't have actually paid for the deposit, I don't think I would have done any of the stuff. I mean, who knows? You just don't know.
There's something really profound there about not always assuming that money's the reason I can't do stuff. Because actually, if you ask, it could, if you don't ask, you don't get. But what's lovely about the nudging angel of Caroline is she. And the question on everyone's lips is, have you repaid her yet, actually?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
You have integrity as well, Joe Bradshaw. We love you for that.
I mean, it was only in 2003, it was a lot of money. It was £250 deposit. I just didn't have it. And I did pay her off. And it goes on to, the 4 things that shape me. So parents, bad stuff, champions, and there's been a series of champions after that. And then my 4th one is series of events or life experiences. And I very much think if I hadn't have been at Business Link, and if I had have been told in the interview that I had to do networking events and stand up and talk at events, I would have walked away.
Yes.
They didn't tell me that, thankfully. I was shoved onto the stage and said, "Go and do your thing."
And by the way, I've seen you speak, and you have just the most gorgeous quality of just being just on the edge of, I'm not meant to be here, this is terrifying, but you do it beautifully because it's very authentic. That's a genuine compliment to you.
Thank you very much. And it's so much easier talking about your life and your experiences than it is talking about fundraising events, from a business perspective. But it was, Business Link gave me the tools to do the job properly, which then meant when I got involved in Discover Adventure, so I actually started leading for them in 2007. So I did 3 bike rides with them in the end. Yeah. And then
and by the way, if I may, sorry to interrupt you, if someone comes into your clearing at the moment, now you've worked this out with joining all the dots up backwards, and you've found a path, even though it's evolving still, and it's not getting there, it's just evolving. If someone comes into your clearing and stands next to you at your oak tree and says, "Joe Bradshaw, what do you do?" What would you say would be your answer to that?
I facilitate people's adventures. That's what I do. Yeah. And I thought about that when I was actually on one of Dave Stewart's netwalking. We were out with a group in Malvern Hills, and my job is outdoor instructor, expedition leader, public speaker. But what do I do is I facilitate people's adventures. You know, I help them get out of their comfort zones.
And what a trailblazer of your own story and narrative are you in that regard?
Yeah, that's the thing, because you get judged a lot doing this job. Everybody gets judged in their own, you know, professions and lives and what have you. But being a female in a predominantly male industry anyway, and also because I haven't been doing it since I was 2, and it's interesting, people judge on what they can see, not what they know. So when clients say, well, it's all right for you, you know, when I'm trying to get them through a tricky situation, they say, well, it's all right for you, blah blah blah. I was like, right, let's just take a minute and I'll just do a very succinct explanation of how I got here, because I have been where you are now. I have been stuck to a mountainside, terrified because I hated heights. You know, I've been looking at a portaloo in, you know, out in the middle of nowhere going, how on earth do I use that? You know, I've looked at food and gone, there is no way I'm eating that. And that was all as I was a client. And sometimes when I've been a leader as well, and you just get on with it.
Just as a snapshot of you visually on screen now, there's just this, I am an adventurer is what you get because of how you're sat in front of a global map.
Yeah,
you've got a beautiful confidence mantra of you've got this. There's a big, what's the mountain peak behind you? There's a mountain.
That's Mount Mawenzi. That's great. Sorry, Lily.
Lily, drop the modem.
That is Nape's Needle in the Lake District, which I'm meant to be going to climb. I tried to set up this project with my van called the Adventure Van with a Social Plan, and I wanted to go and see a load of
say that again. It's beautiful. The Adventure Van with
a Social Plan, and it's all connected to mental health and getting outside of your bubble and everything. And I wanted to go and really push myself, and I enjoy mountain climbing, but I'm not a very confident rock climber, and this is quite gnarly. So a friend of mine said, who is a climbing instructor, he said, well, we'll go and do Nape's Needle. And I looked at it and I was like, what? But I need to, Lily,
naughty. Bad dog. Back in your basket.
Lily, no.
By the way, again, it's this lovely idea of you just saying yes more, yes and you're going to work it out later.
Yeah, and this was sent to me by an amazing lady called Faye Shepherd, who has cycled the length of New Zealand and hooked up with another adventurer called Anna McNuff.
Anna McNuff, did you say?
Anna McNuff, yeah, who was running the length of New Zealand at the same time that Faye was cycling it. They then got together and decided to cycle the length of the Andes from La Paz in Bolivia all the way down to Ushuaia, right at the bottom, in Argentina. Anna's written and also read her book, Llama Drama, about that journey, and Faye was went with her. They really didn't know.
I like the fact you said she's written and read her book, so she's not a ghostwriter.
Audible. Yeah. So she's.
I see what you mean.
Anyway,
sorry.
So when I was trying to get to Carsten's Pyramid, which is here in Indonesia, this time last year, Faye sent me.
By the way, saying it's here in Indonesia and pointing at a map on a podcast is a bit crap, but we know.
Oh yeah, that's true. I can see you. So it's in West Papua in Indonesia.
So listen, forgive me, but I keep tangenting you, and I'm really sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So for people on the podcast that are listening to it and thinking, what on earth is she talking about? Because I forget that actually they might not see it. So I've got a big magnetic map behind me in my kitchen, very colourful, and I've got various postcards on it. And one of the postcards that says, "You've got this." And Faye sent me that, and she is now retrained as a paramedic down in Cornwall and has just the most amazing human being. She's awesome. So,
and Joe Bradshaw, I'm just thinking you really are someone that's got this. So I want to bring us back into the clearing to get back on the path.
Yeah, so we're back on the path.
You've done the 4 things that have shaped you, I think.
Yeah, so parents, bad stuff, champions, series of life's events. So if back to Business Link, that if I hadn't have got the experience of public speaking, I don't think I would have been able to be as effective leading as I am, because it has meant that I got over the fear, or I managed it, of public speaking. And you do briefings to, large groups.
Yeah, it increased your confidence in a nutshell.
Massively. And also doing the talks that I do now, and it is so much easier talking about your own story, because people can't go, I don't think that actually happened, did it? Sometimes if you fluff up a bit, nobody's going to know, because it's a story about nearly 49 years of life.
Yeah.
Oh no, I am 49. 49 years of life, not even nearly, rather than a specific subject.
So where do you want to be on your 50th, as you are a trailblazer?
I want to be doing a challenge of some sort. What that will be in 5 months' time, who knows? Because it's I'll be 50 on the 8th of March, International Women's Day, actually. Here you go. Yes. That's nice. So I'm usually on Kilimanjaro, but I'm not going to be next year anyway. So I have a few ideas of an event or 2 that I would like to.
And by the way, we can pick up on that in an interview too, in the fullness of time.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I keep tangenting you. So we keep going.
So life's experiences, and I'm very much a believer in one thing will benefit the next. You just don't know it at the time. And I didn't know when I was in retail and spending hours on my feet in the shop and doing something that it's not that I didn't want to do, because you have a choice, but it's not how I saw my life, and how that would benefit with me with, when I was clearing up sick on a mountain. So, I don't particularly want to be doing this, but it's all part of it. It's taking the rough with the smooth.
Clearing up your own sick or somebody else's?
Well, mostly someone else's, fortunate these days.
Sickness right there.
Yeah, so moving on about sort of life experiences, and so number 3 is what inspires you. And I think life inspires me. There is so much. I feel like it's, and I don't want this to sound really cheesy, but it's such a privilege to be living. And even when I'm having the really dark days and I'm lying on the sofa and just don't want to move, I know that that's not going to last. And I know that there will be better days ahead. And
it's a great positive mantra. There will be better days ahead.
There will, every day is a good day in varying degrees. And sometimes even in my, when you have your worst days, it's like, I'm still breathing, so that's good.
Every day is a good day in some regards. Again, you're just constantly unbounded optimism keeps.
Well, it's I have been accused of just being unrealistically optimistic, but life is a gift. It's an absolute gift, and we are. And another friend of mine said we are guests on this planet, and it's making the most of that. And I don't go around with sort of, unicorns coming out my head and all these fluffy fairies and everything, despite my lovely lights. I feel that I'm very pragmatic about life and very realistic.
Which again, coming full circle back to what we first started talking about, the pragmatic choice of my work's gone off a cliff. What can I do about it when you started?
Exactly. And I was in a very fortunate, I guess I was in a fortunate position where, I could ship my dogs off to my mum, and that helped her massively. She's 79, lives on her own now. And it just meant that I could go out to work. I couldn't have worked if I still had the dogs, because I didn't have any dog care, and you can't do a 10-hour shift at Tesco and have 2 dogs in the house, not with my 2 anyway. They're 2 spaniels. So I was fortunate that I had that backup.
So nudging you back to the three things that inspire.
Yeah, three things. So inspire me. Life inspires me. You know, there's so much going on, and there's so much to learn and so much to do. But I'm also very much made friends with the fact that if I have to have a down day, rest day, a active rest day, or whatever you want to call it, that I'm not wasting it. I know when I'm being lazy compared to
the tidal flow of life, where it ebbs and flows. You need
it does.
highs, lows, highs. You need the good days.
It is. It's like the weather. You know, you get stormy bits and you get calm bits, and it's never a constant. It's like, you know, it's going back to that phrase of getting there. Well, there is not. It's not a tangible thing, because there will always be ups and downs in life. You know,
eddies and flows. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, when or if I get this new house, I'll be happy. Or, you know, at the moment I'm like, well, if I can get into this particular pair of jeans, then I've done it. And it's like,
if I can get my pants on 3 days in a row without falling over.
If I can just get out of bed in the morning, you know. And it's just a different
there's a lovely connection to just the sense of presence and just getting up each day and just being and contributing and just being there. Rather than getting there, being there is the lovely thing.
There, exactly. Yeah. So other things that inspire me, working problems out. You know, I love a challenge. Sometimes some challenges are a bit bigger than others, like how on earth are we going to get off Camp 1 on Everest when there's been an earthquake, you know? And that was totally taken out of my hands. I had no control of how I was going to get off that mountain in 2015 at all.
And in fact, let's plant this as a cherry. I'm going to do a second interview with you where we'll just talk about the Everest experience.
Perfect.
So don't feel you've got to tell us, because I know that could be an epic interview of itself.
Very different. Yeah. So you know, and even just like I need to put a presentation together for I'm doing a talk for World Extreme Medicines about how expedition medics can work, you know, how we can as leaders work better with expedition medics. So that's my problem today, is I need to sit down and do it. And I'm not very good at sitting down doing stuff. I've got all the sorts of other stuff that I want to do. But once we've finished here, I'm taking the dogs for a walk, and then I am sitting down and I am doing this. So that's it's sort of working out tiny little problems. And also what inspires me is listening to podcasts and audiobooks. I love the fact that books have gone onto a format where I can go and drag Dave and still be immersed into, you know, a book about someone's amazing life, or, you know, I'm learning new skills about X, Y, and Z. You know, that for me is just that. I'm not a great reader. I find reading quite hard work.
It's just a different sort of draw on our energy, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like, you know, it's like at school, people, and even when I'm teaching DV, people learn in different ways through different things you say or different things you do. And for me, audiobooks and podcasts are how my brain likes to learn, rather than sitting and reading. So that's just been an absolute joy. So whoever actually invented that, fantastic. I love you very much.
Probably someone called Mrs. Podcast or Mr.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I've listened to an extraordinary amount of podcasts and audiobooks over the last 6 months. And because when I'm driving in my van for Tesco, I'll have a podcast or a book going on in my ear when I'm driving safely, obviously. Instead of
I'm imagining you've got little Dave in the seat next to you as you drive. Dave the tyre. Not really.
So those are the things
that inspire you.
That inspire me, you know. Lovely. I mean, the list is endless, you know, people and things, and, you know, even my little dog Lily, who I got as a broken 9-month-old puppy, she was absolutely, you know, just the most broken little thing you've ever seen. And apart from chewing bubble wrap, she is the most incredible little 4-legged friend that I have now. You know, she's just turned into the most wonderful part of my life, despite having had such an awful first 9 months of her life. So, you know, and so working out problems, that's been a big that's been a lot of thinking outside the box, that one.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So moving on to the two things
that grab your attention.
Yeah, grab my attention. So they're very much people related. So integrity, humility, and vulnerability in people. You know, I love it when people are being honest with me, and when I'm leading, you get very in tuned when people are hiding stuff from you, or they're not willing to be honest about how they're feeling. It's because I lead a lot of expeditions at altitude, and it is so important to be honest about how you're feeling, because if you're feeling unwell because of the altitude, there is usually something I can do about it.
Yeah.
If you don't tell me, then usually I have to send you down. All right. So there's consequences are quite high for not being honest. And I love it when people are just honest with me. And I think very much that comes from me of telling them stories about when I got it wrong and I didn't tell somebody I was, you know, so it's, again, for me, it's really important to be humble and show a bit of vulnerability as well, because people see that you're human and not this sort of leader who, you know, takes no shizzle and all this stuff. It's no, I totally get that you're going to feel pretty bad most of the trek, but there's
definitely another interview to be had here about all the lessons that you have to teach us about the analogy and metaphor.
Yeah, and things that grab my attention is random acts of kindness. I love it. You know, when just somebody will say to you in the street, "Oh, that looks really nice," or when, you know, you hear of people, just maybe somebody's at the till and they haven't got enough money, or they've forgotten their card, or it doesn't work, and someone else says, "Oh yeah, I'll just get that for you." And I've had this, and I'll touch on it very quickly, is when Everest started becoming a thing, is a sponsor found me and enabled me to go and do Everest twice, pretty much, because obviously, you know, we touch on the fact that I was in the earthquake on Everest in 2015, and then I went back in 2016, and out of that came
and that of itself, which we'll talk about later,
yeah,
incredibly
exactly.
brave and intrepid to go back to a place of extraordinary trauma.
Yeah. So it's that, you know, and I alluded to earlier on that there's no such thing as a selfless act. So random acts of kindness are, you're doing it to make yourself feel good, because there's a consequence to every action, and that consequence is, I feel pretty
it's
good.
The power of reciprocity. It's my favorite word about influencing. What you give out, you will get back.
Absolutely. And a simple thank you is, and a smile, and I know it's difficult at the moment, you can still see your eyes when you're smiling behind your mask. A simple thank you, and I've learned this probably more over the last 6 months when I've been delivering for Tesco, means so much more. You know, you can light someone's fire, or you can dampen their flames just by just a random act of something.
Yes, the quality of one's energy, as you said, the emotional wake earlier on, and you can project it forward. Like, are you a radiator? Are you a drain?
Yes.
Is it warming being around you? Which, of course, in your case, it absolutely is.
Oh, that's very kind. I have my moments, but yeah, it is. It's very. I'm so aware of, if I don't want to be spoken, it's how I would like to be spoken to, is how I speak to people. You know, I am human. I have my moments of, you know, annoyance or frustration, but I don't want to leave somebody feeling rubbish, because that's just not on, you know.
And emotional wake. I know we've got the synergy of the earthquake, and there's lots of stuff to,
you know, how would you, I say this to my students, is like, when I get home, how would you like me to describe you to my mum? If somebody was to write a profile on you, how would it be written? She's really annoying, she's, you know, she's very dramatic, she's a bit of a mood vampire, you know, all of this. Or she's kind, and she solves problems, and all, you know, thinks of others, and all of this. So it's that sort of side of things that that grabs my attention. So the quirky or unusual facts about myself. So when I was 30, and I felt I'd lived a very normal, unextraordinary life, which is fine. But I was very much, I blended in. So I went and got my tongue pierced.
Get in. And is there still
No.
something stud in there now? No, there isn't.
No. So it hurts. So what they do is they grab your tongue with this pair of tweezers that's got a hole in the top, like a loop in the top and bottom.
Yeah.
And they say to you, don't pull your tongue back in. But of course, when they've got your tongue out here and it's clamped, and then they're bringing this great big stud, you're like, what? And I did, tug it just as, so my tongue swelled up quite a lot. I was on liquidized food for a month. It's great weight loss. I was liquidizing lasagnas. I liquidized a Sunday lunch because you can't eat. You've put a hole.
I love that. Message me for other recipes.
And also what I found is that I used to rub.
Also, sorry, the comedian me's riffing on that. Have you retracted your tongue during an accident to do with piercing? Contact me for some more recipes.
Yeah, exactly. You get a list from it, and when I was trying to do my job, that was not cool. And also what I found is that I would just sit and rub the ball against the back of my teeth, which again was really annoying to everyone around you and really not very good for the back of your teeth either.
You sort of clack a lot, I imagine.
You do, yeah. And also when you're trying to eat, when I did finally start to eat, is that I'd feel that I would crunch on the bar, and it's just wrong.
Yeah, piercings, people, don't do it. It's not the right. Well, they could.
And I'd had my belly button pierced a few years before, and that's quite fine because nobody really sees that, and it's all it's all fine. But it was just a bit odd, and when I said when my parents saw that I had, my dad was like, "Oh dear Lord," it's like, what next? And I had really led them quite a safe childhood. I hadn't really been a huge amount of trouble, I don't think. But yeah.
The real journey, listening, reading between the lines there, your journey to who you now have become got on the open road from 30 plus, didn't it?
I actually think probably a bit later than that. Yeah, from I think really when
it's the point at which we truly emerge as our authentic self.
I know. I think
in our path.
It's funny because my dad always used to say, I don't think anyone really changes after they're 21. And I disagreed. Dad and I had quite good discussions sometimes. And I said, people can change. It doesn't matter what age they are. It's what happens in their life that draws a certain side of them.
Shapes us like a sculptor with a bit of rock. It's sculpted.
Yeah, definitely.
Oozes out of rock.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go. So it lasted a month. I got rid of it. Thank God.
But you've stumbled on some beautiful liquidized recipes. There is a
liquidized lasagna was a treat.
I just have to say that sounds so ill. Liquidized lasagna, but anyway, good luck with that.
It's just soup, really, isn't it?
So now bringing us back into the clearing, you've been giving us alchemy and gold by the bucket load. We've struck so many seams of gold in what you've been talking about, but just let me ask you a really simple question, which is, when you are totally at purpose and in flow, Jo Bradshaw, what is the alchemy you love to bring in the job that you love to do?
I love to bring encouragement, so that if people are having an I can't do this moment, is getting them over that, so that they, instead of saying can I, they say I can. Yeah. Which
as you know, frame as I am Spartacus.
I am Spartacus. Yeah, well, that's my version of the I, and I use two characters, whether I'm doing DV or whether I'm climbing a mountain with someone, called Negative Nelly and Positive Polly. And these characters very much came to the fore when I was on Everest and having a really bad time in 2016, and I nearly walked off.
And hold that thought, because
Yes.
when a positive Polly, sorry, negative Nelly and positive
Negative
Polly,
Nelly and positive Polly.
we will pick that up about your story about Everest, because there's definitely part two.
So I won't tell that story, but for me, it's when people are having negative time, I tell them about the time that happened, and quite often since then as well. And Nelly on my left shoulder would sit and have a bit of a chat going, you're not supposed to be here, you don't belong in this world or in this industry. Oh, excuse me. And you're not capable of doing it, and all the negative stuff that's like an earworm, isn't it?
Yes. A negative earworm. I love that.
Yeah. And then positive Polly kicks in, and for my climbs, I have, and even on my rucksack now, I have a place to be charity badge on my right shoulder, and I just put it there not because I just did it subconsciously, but it's definitely on the right shoulder, and it's you can do this, you are capable, and
it's the reason why to keep pulling you forward.
Exactly. And it's really interesting because so many people have different ways of doing this. So Anna McNuff, the adventurer,
Lily,
can you hear that? She's now digging under my.
You've either got an extremely large gerbil, or Lily's
Lily, just go to bed. That's all you need to do. So Anna McNuff has the Soldiers of Self-Doubt and her cheerleaders.
Okay.
Another adventurer called Sarah Uten, who is amazing. Lily has her peloton. So when she's having a tough time, whether she's rowing around across an ocean or cycling somewhere, she has this peloton of support that is pushing her along the way.
And we're not talking about Peloton, which is what you take when you've got hives.
No, exactly. Peloton as in the cycling line.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
You know, so
that's when they corner at an extraordinary rate, and that's
they do. Yeah, and also with the peloton is that there's somebody at the front who is doing all of the hard work. So they're not breaking wind, but they are breaking the flow in the air.
They're breaking wind. It's fine. I get that.
They're setting the pace. They're doing all of this, and then the people behind are having an easier ride. And then the person at the front comes out and drops back, and then the next person takes on that mantle, and that's that sort of working
like
together.
geese flying towards the sun, sort of thing.
Yeah. So people who have got your back, they know they're going to have a little bit of an easy ride, but then they need to step up, and it's having that sort of push of encouragement. And so my version has always been Nelly and Polly, and it does. You can name them whoever. It can be Nelson and Peter, or whatever you wish it to be. For me, Nelly and Polly.
I love the characters in your life: negative Nelly, positive Polly, and Dave and Dee. So, if I may, and by the way, this is delicious. To be continued.
Yes.
There's so much still to talk about. I'm now going to award you with a cake, Joe Bradshaw, and it's your opportunity to put a cherry on the cake, which is open to interpretation. It's the best piece of advice you've ever been given. Your favorite inspirational quote, advice to your younger self, whatever. How would you like to interpret the cherry on the cake as the legacy of this conversation?
So my favorite quote, and also the piece of advice that I take and also encourage others, is don't be a dick.
I love that. Thank you very much. That's worth the wait. Boom. Don't be a dick, people.
Don't be a dick. It is just so simple. And I say it to, if I'm getting myself into a bit of a state, I'll say, Joe, just don't be a dick. Or if Lily is being a bit of a donut at the time, and I obviously have this tone with her of, and she just stops.
Lovely.
And it's just such a, and when I'm out on the mountains, and I don't use it with students, obviously, we reframe it into don't be a donut, is a much nicer way of.
By the way, I wouldn't necessarily agree with you. I think sometimes there are ways of saying stuff that's clearest if you say what you're trying to say.
Oh yeah, but saying that to a 14-year-old, not.
Well, actually, in my own parenting,
but they're not my children. You can say it to your own children, but if I said that to a student and they went back to their mum and dad and went, that instructor called me a dick, I don't think I think that may not go down so well. They absolutely at that age, they understand.
By the way, it's a judgment call, isn't it? Because there are certain kids you can't call a donut for obvious reasons as well.
Well, probably, yeah. Exactly. So it's whatever word you wish to use. But I when I'm out on the mountains and you know, I'm trying to explain something to people, and I kind of get it in the conversation of, because I want people to take responsibility for their actions. They don't come on an expedition and go, there you are now responsible for my fitness, my health, my XYZ. It's like, no, you still need to own that in order to take responsibility for it. So I get it into the conversation by saying, oh, when I did this, I was such a dick and I did X, Y, and Z, and the consequences were. So they again understand that I'm human and I make mistakes, but I've learned from them. And then it's really interesting, the shift change, and people use it. I can hear them going, you know, in the tent when they're trying to pack up, going, oh God, will you stop being a dick? You know, it's just,
yes.
I love it. I love it.
And by the way, that's like your emotional wake as well. It's if people have
Yes.
a mantra that you've planted, because, you know, similarly, I've been very chuffed where people many years later go, oh yes, I remember you because of I Am Spartacus.
Yes.
So this idea of confidence mantras, or just ways of coping with the world in all of its texture and adversity.
Yeah.
So you have been listening to Jo Bradshaw on the Good Listening To podcast. And just finally, Jo, if people want to find out more about you, and we will do a part 2 because there's so much to talk about, particularly with the Everest story, which we've and don't be frustrated, we will return to that if you're listening to this thinking, why didn't we talk about that? But where can people find out more about you, Jo Bradshaw? Okay,
so I have a fabulous website which is designed by a very lovely friend. So it's jobradshaw.co.uk. I am on Facebook and Instagram as Jo Bradshaw, or Instagram _Jo Bradshaw, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. I'm not on Twitter. I deleted my Twitter account in March because I found it a very negative space.
And if I may, _Jo Bradshaw is perfect. If I could just underscore you with how fantastically awesome you have been on this. And by the way, quite by happy accident, and it's interesting, this is the longest podcast I've done so far. So it's not that I can't.
Whoever gets to the end of this, you need a reward of some sort. You need a prize.
You do. You've got this. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Good Listening To podcast. I have been Chris Grimes, and that has been Jo Bradshaw. To be continued, and goodbye. Beautiful. So I've stopped recording, I think, and no, I haven't stopped recording. Awkward. And goodbye.